Part 56. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 551. Chapter 551 Yan Chen returns to China. Yan Chen has returned to China. When Luo Xian received Yan Chen's invitation to have a meal, she hesitated for 2 seconds. However, after thinking about it later, there seemed to be nothing wrong with just having a meal. After all, we are good friends from college. We haven't seen each other for so many years, so having a meal together is nothing special. Hence, Luo Xian nodded in agreement. When Luo Xian went out, Xia Ying saw Luo Xian, her eyes lit up, and she said with a smile, "Mom, you are dressed up so beautifully today, are you going on a date with your dad?" Luo Xian was startled after hearing this, and said angrily, "What nonsense, are you kidding? The college entrance examination is about to take place, and you are still watching TV. Go study quickly." Xia Ying smiled, then turned off the TV and walked towards the study. The relationship between Luo Xian and Xia Chuanhai has eased a lot recently. At least, she is not as repulsive to him as before. During this period, Xia Chuanhai was very busy at work. He seemed to have taken on several big orders, many of which were in cooperation with foreign multinational companies. However, whenever he has time, Xia Chuanhai will come over to find Luo Xian. Luo Xian has nothing to do recently, so she volunteers to teach at the senior citizen college in the community to teach the elderly English. Firstly, it kills time, and secondly, it's a good deed. Xia Chuanhai will come over to take Luo Xian home when he has time. Luo Xian didn't reject him either, and was always kind to him. She was not hanging on Xia Chuanhai, although deep down she had already forgiven her. But Luo Xian still acted very indifferent on her face. After all, Xia Chuanhai had betrayed her. If she really wanted to get back together, then Luo Xian must see Xia Chuanhai's absolute sincerity. So, during this period, it is better to say that Xia Chuanhai is pursuing Luo Xian again, but it is better to say that Luo Xian is testing his sincerity and endurance. However, no matter how indifferent Luo Xian behaved, Xia Chuanhai's enthusiasm remained undiminished. Although there is nothing to talk about between them now, Xia Chuanhai is a person who is very good at finding topics. If he is bored, he will tell Luo Xian some interesting things in the company. Xia Chuanhai likes to see Luo Xian smile. Her smile is as gentle as catkins and as warm as the winter Sunday in the past. Xia Chuanhai, no matter how tired he was every time he came home, he would immediately relax physically and mentally when he saw Luo Xian's healing smile. When Luo Xian arrived at the designated place, a middle-aged man wearing gold-rimmed glasses, very neatly styled hair, a white shirt, black pants, a fair face, and regular facial features was sitting there. From the moment she appeared, just keep focusing on her. Yan Chen is not a handsome guy who is stunning in the public sense, but he has a decent face, extraordinary temperament, and is very good looking. Standing in the crowd, he is still so eye-catching. After so many years, the literary and artistic atmosphere in Yan Chen is still so strong. When Luo Xian approached, Yan Chen stood up in a very gentlemanly manner and arranged a chair for Luo Xian and asked her to sit down. Luo Xian said thank you in a low voice. The moment Yan Chen saw Luo Xian, he seemed to have returned to that summer. He was sitting on the stairs looking for inspiration, and then a girl in a plain white dress with a beautiful smile came into his sight. From that moment on, he knew what a poetic girl was like. Even after so many years, Yan Chen saw that Luo Xian was still as frightened as before. She hasn't changed at all, or in other words, with the baptism of time, she has become more feminine. The elegance and dignity in every gesture made Yan Chen's heart flutter. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yun Suya. Chapter 552. Chapter 552 I Want to Pursue You Again. The two of them were reminiscing about old times like ordinary friends, talking about innocuous things. Yan Chen is a complete gentleman. He knows what should be said and what has not yet been said. So when I was getting along with him, I hadn't seen him for so many years, and the relationship was still somewhat awkward. He was actually able to make Luo Xi and talk to him naturally without any burden. For such a good man like Yan Chen, his future wife will definitely be very happy. Luo Xian felt that it was not worthwhile for Yan Chen to spend time and energy on herself. Yan Chen didn't ask about her and Xiaochuan Hai, nor did he say anything about pursuing her, so it was hard for Luo Xian to tell him to give up. In doing so, it seemed that she was a little worried. So, Luo Xian and Yan Chen chatted for a long time like old friends. Finally, Yan Chen gave Luo Xian a collection of poems. This is my latest collection of poems. It will be released soon. If you don't mind it, you can take a look. Yan Chen said to Luo Xian, neither humble nor arrogant. He knew that Luo Xian also liked literature, poetry, novels, and some romantic fantasy things when she was in college. Yan Chen was thinking at that time that he must do his best to stay with the girl whose hobbies were similar to his own. However, Yan Chen later discovered that the person she liked was Xiaochuan Hai. Luo Xian collected it and said goodbye to Yan Chen. On the way back, Luo Xian looked through Yan Chen's collection of poems. His writing is still so touching. Yan Chen is the poet she has read who is best at writing love poems. The love poems he wrote are sad but not sad, colorful but not obscene, and are very brilliant. Luo Xian read a string of small characters on the title page, if possible, I would like to pursue you again. Luo Xian frowned. She had long known that Yan Chen's purpose of returning to China this time was her. Although he didn't mention these words when they met today, Luo Xian had already vaguely sensed it from his eyes. Luo Xian put the poetry book on his lap, looked out the window, and pondered quietly. The college entrance examination is getting closer and closer. These days, Xia Ying has completely given up practicing musical instruments and focused all her energy on studying. When Xia Ying was studying, Yu Lingfeng would sit across from her quietly and read, so that he could give advice if she had any questions. Yu Lingfeng, physics is so difficult. Xia Ying is doing a set of physics simulation questions. The last question in physics is always the most difficult. Especially the last question, which often makes people think hard and can't figure it out. Xia Ying has been staring at the picture for a long time, but she just can't figure out why. Various conjectures and various methods were tried, but in the end they all failed halfway, so I had no choice but to turn to Yu Lingfeng for help. Yu Lingfeng recovered from his book, looked down at the question Xia Ying asked, and took her book. Xia Ying sneaked closer to Yu Lingfeng, wanting to see what weird books Yu Lingfeng was reading. Xia Ying flipped through it casually, and sure enough, it was about the universe, quantum physics, astrophysics, and the like. Why does Yu Lingfeng like these things so much? Just as Xia Ying was thinking about it, she was suddenly attracted by one of the black hole theories and looked into it unknowingly. The book mentions the possibility of time travel. According to Einstein's theory of relativity, time travel is entirely possible. Although Xia Ying doesn't understand much about these things, she is quite interested in the concept of time travel because she has watched too many time travel dramas. Thanks to the little cutie Li Mengqing for the reward. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 553. Chapter 553, How did you come to Earth? It also mentions something like parallel universes. Xia Ying only knew the term, but never knew what it meant. Now that she looked at it twice, She seemed to have a hard time understanding it. If she looked at these things every day like Yu Lingfeng, her head would explode. There is a problem with this topic. Xia Ying was still secretly reading Yu Lingfeng's book. Yu Lingfeng suddenly turned his head and said something to Xia Ying. Is there a problem? Xia Ying was puzzled, and then turned over the answer to Yu Lingfeng, but, look at the analysis of the answer. Yu Lingfeng glanced at the answer and said, there are also problems with the answer. Oh, okay. Xia Ying might not believe it if other people said there was a problem, but if Yu Lingfeng said there was a problem, then it was 100% correct. Then I won't do this question now. Xia Ying put it aside and was suddenly attracted by Yu Lingfeng's book, and stared at it for a long time. Yu Lingfeng saw Xia Ying's appearance and had no intention of taking it. He just stared at her drooping long eyelashes and asked, are you also interested in this? It seems quite interesting to see this talk about time travel. Xia Ying wants to finish reading this. Actually, the universe is so interesting. Xia Ying suddenly thought of something when she heard Yu Lingfeng's meaningful words. She raised her eyes to look at Yu Lingfeng and asked, Yu Lingfeng, how did you come to Earth? Yu Lingfeng frowned. Did he accidentally bring up some topic? Come here in a spaceship, or, like Doraemon, come here in a time machine. Yu Lingfeng looked at Xia Ying's childlike curious eyes, and suddenly smiled lightly, guess. Xia Ying immediately became exhausted, pouted her lips slightly, and said angrily, Yu Lingfeng, you are like this. This is not Yu Lingfeng at all. Yu Lingfeng looked at Xia Ying funny, then what should I do? Xia Ying immediately sat up, calmed down the expression on her face, and imitated Yu Lingfeng, with a cold expression and an indifferent look, and said words without warmth, take a spaceship. Yu Lingfeng was amused by Xia Ying. In fact, Yu Lingfeng looks very good when he smiles. His black glazed pupils light up instantly, and his eyebrows can be so tender. So I guessed it right, did you come here by spaceship? No. Yu Lingfeng shook his head. What is that? I'm afraid you won't believe me if I tell you. Xia Ying's appetite was completely whetted by Yu Lingfeng. No, 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 I will definitely believe it. It fell to earth during the Star Wars. After hearing what Yu Lingfeng said, Xia Ying's expression changed instantly. Her eyes were round and she stared at Yu Lingfeng in disbelief. Star Wars, like in the movies. Xia Ying has begun to have pictures in her mind. Much more intense than that. Yu Lingfeng recalled the scene at that time and still vividly remembered it. What's the reason, is it a land grab? Xia Ying started brainstorming. No, it was the people from the other planet who started the trouble, but in the end, we won. Obviously it was something as intense as the war, but when Yu Lingfeng said it, it was as easy as drinking water. Xia Ying couldn't believe it. Then, why haven't you gone back? Xia Ying asked in a low voice, looking into Yu Lingfeng's eyes expectantly. Yu Lingfeng lowered his eyes slightly and met Xia Ying's gaze with tenderness. A faint smile was clearly visible at the corner of his mouth. Because, I'm waiting for you. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 554. Chapter 554, Seeing Someone Who Scares Yu Lingfeng for the First Time. As soon as Yu Lingfeng finished speaking, Xia Ying was stunned. Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng looked at each other, as if they had lasted 10,000 years. Xia Ying always feels that Yu Lingfeng is a person with a story, which is why he is so unpredictable. Okay, stop thinking blindly and study. Yu Lingfeng reached out, touched Xia Ying's head, said softly, and then took away her book. Oh! Xia Ying responded. The moment she lowered her head, a blush appeared on her face. Yu Lingfeng's words, because, I'm waiting for you, kept lingering in Xia Ying's mind, and Xia Ying felt her heart beating very fast. At this time, There was a knock on the door. Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng looked up and saw two brothers, Chu Shengming and Chu Shenxiu, walking over. Chu Shengming was holding a plate of chocolates in his hand. When Yu Lingfeng's eyes fell on the chocolates, he immediately frowned. That must not be ordinary chocolate. Chu Shenxiu approached Xia Ying with a smile and said, "Cousin Xia Ying, are you hungry? Are you tired? Do you want to try my brother's latest super chocolate?" Super chocolate. Xia Ying frowned and thought about these words. What the is this? At this time, Chu Shengming had already walked over and put down his plate. Xia Ying looked down and stared at the so-called super chocolate that looked very ordinary and was no different from ordinary chocolate. Chu Shengming began to introduce his research results seriously. "This is the latest chocolate I developed. It is different from ordinary chocolate. Its calories are 1/5 of ordinary chocolate, and the taste is not much different. It is very suitable for you. The most important thing for these girls who are afraid of gaining weight is that this chocolate also contains tryptophan contained in bananas. Tryptophan can be converted into 5-hydroxytryptamine, an inhibitory neurotransmitter that can promote people's mood becomes peaceful. It is very suitable for your current preparation state and makes you relax and calm down." Xia Ying's eyes lit up when she heard this, and her expression suddenly changed when she looked at the plate of chocolates. Chu Shengming knew that Xia Ying liked to eat chocolate, especially when she was nervous and anxious, so she liked to eat it even more, and she couldn't control herself when she ate it. So, Chu Shengming took advantage of the fact that there wasn't much going on in the research institute recently and took some time out of his busy schedule to make such an improved version of chocolate. Specifically made for Xia Ying. "Wow, thank you 12th cousin." Xia Ying looked at the plate of chocolates happily, couldn't wait to take out a piece and put it in her mouth to eat. "It's delicious." "Yu Lingfeng, do you want to try it?" Xia Ying said, picked up a piece of chocolate and handed it to Yu Lingfeng. Yu Lingfeng instinctively shook his head and refused. After what happened last time, he no longer dared to eat anything that Chu Shengming called an improved version. Chu Shenxiu saw Yu Lingfeng's reaction and immediately laughed. "Ha ha, Yu Lingfeng, are you afraid of the well rope after being bitten by a snake for 10 years? Yu Lingfeng had a dark face and did not answer. Chu Shenxiu then turned to Chu Shengming and said, "Brother, you are really amazing. This is the first time I have seen someone who can make Yu Lingfeng so afraid. Ha ha, ugh." Yu Lingfeng suddenly flew towards Chu Shenxiu with a flying needle. Chu Shenxiu's laughter stopped suddenly. Xia Ying was stunned and looked at Yu Lingfeng. Yu Lingfeng slowly raised his eyes to look at Chu Shenxiu and said coldly, "You talk a lot." End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 555. Chapter 555, Do whatever you want by relying on your high IQ. Chu Shenxiu suddenly found that he could not speak, so he could only stare at Xia Ying helplessly. Xia Ying was too distracted to pay attention to Chu Shenxiu. Instead, she looked at Yu Lingfeng in surprise and asked, "Yu Lingfeng, how did you do it? Where did he hide the needle?" So fast that Xia Ying didn't even react, Yu Lingfeng had already taken action to make Chu Shenxiu calm down. Yu Lingfeng replied calmly, "I read a book about Chinese medicine and acupuncture some time ago, and suddenly found it very interesting, so I learned it by the way." Xia Ying swallowed silently. Chinese medicine is profound, and the acupuncture points of the human body are even more complicated. Yu Lingfeng is very convenient. Relying on my high IQ, I can really do whatever I want and learn whatever I want. I thought it was interesting before, but now I see it. Yu Lingfeng raised his head and glanced at Chu Shenxiu, who almost cried, and then said, "It's quite useful." Xia Ying was impressed by Chu Shenxiu's little look, so she had to say to Yu Lingfeng, "Okay, Yu Lingfeng, just let him go. He just has a bad mouth, so don't argue with him." Chu Shenxiu nodded quickly, his eyes full of remorse. He actually provoked Yu Lingfeng, the omnipotent Buddha, and he was simply asking for trouble. Chu Sensio feels that sometimes, you still have to be soft. It is also necessary to bow to the old monster Yu Lingfeng. Yu Lingfeng calmly pulled out the tiny needle. Chu Sensio breathed a sigh of relief and began to breathe in the air. He was finally able to make a sound. Yu Lingfeng, okay, you are awesome. Yu Lingfeng took out the needle too fast. His body didn't have time to react, and he had no idea where the needle was. At this moment, Chu Shenming's phone rang, and Chu Shenming answered the unfamiliar number with a suspicious look on his face. No, I don't have time. Well, we'll talk about it tomorrow. I'll hang up. Xia Ying was stunned as she listened to the series of words. She ended the phone call in less than 10 seconds, and it turned out to be Chu Shenming who demanded high efficiency. 12 cousin, is this the institute's phone number? No. Chu Shenming put the phone back into his pocket and said, a colleague. Male or female? Chu Sensio asked subconsciously and looked at Chu Shenming expectantly. It must be a man. Didn't cousin 12 say that all the men in their house are men? Xia Ying explained casually. No. Unexpectedly, as soon as Xia Ying finished speaking, Chu Shenming interrupted. Xia Ying, a female colleague came here a few days ago. She is quite powerful. She just called me and said she was going to date me. Go out to eat. Chu Shenming frowned as he said this, feeling strange. It's already 10 o'clock in the evening, what's for dinner? Besides, I'm not in the habit of eating late night snacks. What the hell? Chu Sensio interrupted Chu Shenming's next words, looking like he hated iron and even cursed inadvertently. Oh my god. Brother, are you serious? This girl hinted so obviously, she obviously likes you. Chu Shenming heard this and looked at Xia Ying doubtfully. Xia Ying nodded quickly and agreed with Chu Sensio's views. Chu Shenming dug in his pocket for a long time. Everyone looked at him expectantly, thinking that he was going to return the girl's phone number. However, Chu Shenming took out a pen and paper and meticulously took notes. Everyone. Chu Shenming, girls are really a troublesome species. This is actually a kind of courtship cue. I've learned a lot. Thanks to the little cuties Kitty and Qingsheng and he are you for the reward. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 556. Chapter 556. Your prediction is right. Xia Ying held her forehead helplessly, and couldn't help but scream in her heart, when will his 12th cousin be able to wake up? He is said to have high IQ and high EQ, but when it comes to gender relations, his knowledge reserve is like a clean white paper. Chu Sensio couldn't stand his brother's behavior any longer. He quickly grabbed Chu Shenming's arm and pulled him out. As he walked, he said, I think I should teach you something. The next day, when Xia Ying just arrived in the classroom, Jun Chenai suddenly pulled her arm in a panic. His face turned a little blue, and the eyes looking at Xia Ying were no longer as clear and lively as usual. Looking at his expression, he looked tired, probably because he didn't get a good rest yesterday. Your prediction was right. Jun Chenai opened his mouth, and it took him a long time to say this excitedly. A few days ago, Xia Ying told him that she could tell fortunes, and also mentioned who the assistant director and the final draft of the script were. Jun Chenai sneered at that time, thinking that Xia Ying was trying to be funny, but yesterday, he just learned the news that Xia Ying's prediction was actually right. After Anna, who was previously responsible for finalizing the manuscript, finished revising the manuscript, she suddenly handed it over to Lanchester for final revisions. As for the assistant director Alan, because of something unexpected, he suddenly postponed this task and gave the position of assistant director to his good friend Christopher. The probability of either of these two things happening is extremely low, let alone that they would collide at the same time. However, Xia Ying guessed it correctly. Jun Chenai suddenly thought about it and became very frightened. How did Xia Ying calculate it? However, after hearing Jun Chenai's words, Xia Ying acted even more panicked than him. If all of this has come true, then does the last performance accident mean that history will repeat itself? Xia Ying lowered her head and thought about something, desperately searching for memories of the accident in her mind. What was the reason why that accident happened? Seeing Xia Ying lower her head and ignoring her, Jun Chenai quickly asked, I was so scared yesterday that I couldn't even sleep well. Why don't you tell me how you calculated it? It's really scary. Can Xia Ying really tell fortunes? Yes, sleep. Just sleep. That scene was because Jun Chenai was going to rescue a little girl who was hostage. The little girl was sleeping. The setting at that time was that there was a time bomb in the room. Jun Chenai had to get the little girl out of the tall building within 30 seconds. Rescue, and after 30 seconds, the bomb will explode. Hollywood blockbusters often use real explosives. Blowing up luxury cars and high-rise buildings is a routine operation in blockbusters. For realistic effects, real bombs were also used. However, while performing this scene, something suddenly went wrong with the bomb. It was originally planned to be exploded remotely after the scene was filmed. I don't know why, but it suddenly exploded while everyone was still filming. When the bomb exploded, everyone present was caught off guard. Fortunately, this bomb was only needed for filming, and the heavy bomb that actually blew up the high-rise building was not moved out for use. Therefore, no more serious injuries were caused, but people close to the explosion range of the bomb were severely injured. 3 people were killed and more than 20 people were seriously injured. Qinya in the previous life was also blown into a vegetative state. If the protagonist in this life becomes Jun Chenai, and all other factors remain unchanged, will Jun Chenai follow in Qinya's footsteps? End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 557. Chapter 557 She is obsessed. The explanation given by Hollywood at the time was very vague, saying it was a performance accident, but the real reason has always been discussed by the outside world. Therefore, Xia Ying didn't know the cause of the incident. Naturally, it was difficult to avoid the accident. Jun Chenai, do you have a scene about rescuing a little girl who is a hostage? Xia Ying asked again. Jun Chenai frowned, shook his head, and said, I haven't seen Lanchester's script yet. I only read Anna's revised script, which seems to be missing. After Xia Ying heard this, her pupils dilated instantly, and she suddenly had an idea in her heart. Since there is no Anna's manuscript and it was added by Lanchester later, if Xia Ying can ask her not to write this scene, can the disaster in the previous life be avoided? What's on your mind? Jun Chenai frowned and stared at Xia Ying with suspicion. What's going on with her expression? Why does she seem so happy? Jun Chenai was already confused by her, so what was the use of these questions she asked? And how on earth did she know? Can you really tell fortunes? Jun Chenai didn't believe it. He was an atheist, and he couldn't be deceived by fortune-telling theories. So Jun Chenai was shocked that Xia Ying could predict these things in advance. Jun Chenai, do you still have Anna's revised manuscript? Xia Ying turned to look at him and asked. Jun Chenai took out his mobile phone and said while looking for it, yes, it was sent to us a few days ago to look at and ask for our opinions. Xia Ying's phone vibrated, and Jun Chenai sent the manuscript to her phone. Let me tell you in advance, this is confidential and must not be seen by others. Jun Chenai behaves in a righteous way. I know, don't worry. Xia Ying opened the manuscript. It was all in English and contained a lot of professional vocabulary. It still seemed a bit difficult. Xia Ying could only look up the words while reading the script. Jun Chennai said silently from the side, so when are you going to tell me, where do you know all this? You told me I can tell fortunes. Xia Ying was reading the script carefully, so she answered Jun Chennai's questions casually. Jun Chennai's face turned dark. This girl really thought he was a 3-year-old child. Is he so easy to deceive? Sakura, please lend me your chemistry notebook. At this time, Yeziaksun suddenly turned his head and said to Xia Ying. Xia Ying met Yeziaksun's gaze and suddenly had a great idea in her heart. Yeziaksun writes like this, if she were to change the script. Xia Ying suddenly raised her lips and smiled. Yeziaksun was confused by Xia Ying's inexplicable smile. He frowned and looked at Xia Ying. What's wrong, Xia Ying? Ignore her, she's obsessed. Jun Chennai said coldly from the side. I've been reading that script, but I don't even give him a thumbs up. Now, give it. Xia Ying handed over the notebook, and then gave Jun Chennai a blank look. If this guy knew that his death was imminent and she was saving him, let's see if he could still say these rude words. Jun Chennai, I see that your appearance has become dark recently, and you have serious dark circles and bags under your eyes. You should burn incense and pay homage when you go home, otherwise the second half of the year will be full of disasters. Xia Ying said to Jun Chennai with a look like I am a compassionate Buddha. Jun Chennai rolled his eyes and snorted, I'm afraid you are sick. End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 558. Chapter 558. Why is Xiaju here? Xia Ying went home and eagerly told Yu Lingfeng her thoughts. However, Yu Lingfeng kept looking at his book with lowered eyes and seemed to have no intention of paying attention to Xia Ying. Xia Ying didn't know whether he listened to what she said. Yu Lingfeng, just give me a reaction. After all, it's a human life. No, it's many lives. Xia Ying continued, I know you may think I'm talking nonsense, but it's hard for me to talk to you. Please explain clearly that if you don't help, such a disaster is likely to happen. Yu Lingfeng then raised his eyes to look at Xia Ying. Yu Lingfeng's face was very calm, and he seemed not to be touched by what Xia Ying said. Xia Ying couldn't understand the meaning in Yu Lingfeng's eyes, so she added silently, do you think I'm talking nonsense, or do you think I'm confusing dreams with reality? But how should she explain to Yu Lingfeng that she had been reborn and that she knew all these things? No. Yu Lingfeng interrupted Xia Ying lightly and looked at her expressionlessly, what do you need me to do? Huh, Xia Ying herself didn't expect that Yu Lingfeng actually believed it. She even felt that a lot of things she just said seemed like nonsense. However, the fact is that Yu Lingfeng believed it and was still asking about her countermeasures. Didn't you say you wanted to save people? Since you came here to ask for help, shouldn't you have a way? Yes, Xia Ying nodded quickly, I have a method, so I need your help. Yu Lingfeng put the book aside, stood up, and looked down at Xia Ying, then let's go. Yu Lingfeng walked forward, Xia Ying followed behind him, still a little unresponsive. Yu Lingfeng, do you really believe it? Don't you wonder how I know this? Xia Ying originally thought that she would have to spend a lot of energy to explain, but in the end, Yu Lingfeng just believed it without any process. A normal person's reaction would be like Jun Chennai's, thinking she was joking. Could what you just said be false? Yu Lingfeng paused and looked at Xia Ying. Xia Ying quickly shook her head, of course not, it's true. That'll do. Yu Lingfeng continued walking and asked, what should I do? Xia Ying calmed down and said, you can change the space. I just want you to copy her manuscript before Lanchester's deadline. I will ask Xiaoxun to modify the fragment, and then you can copy it. Let's change the manuscript and use the civet cat to change the prince. What if she finds out? Of course she will find out, so I need my goo. Xia Ying said, shaking the goo insect bracelet on her wrist. Yu Lingfeng looked at Xia Ying's bracelet, stared at it for a while, thought about it, and said, "Isn't Xiaju at Stefan's place?" As soon as Yu Lingfeng finished speaking, a small goo insect flew out. Xia Ying looked at Yu Lingfeng in surprise. "You actually know Xiaju's ability." Xia Ying originally thought that Yu Lingfeng's understanding of Xiaoju would only help people sleep well. Because this is what Xiaoju has shown so far. Yu Lingfeng did not answer, but stared at the little goo insect and asked, "Why is Xiaoju here?" "As long as I need it, Xiaoju will find me as quickly as possible," Xia Ying said cheerfully, then reached out to touch Xiaoju gently, and Xiaoju rubbed Xia Ying's cheek affectionately. End of this chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuan Suya. Chapter 559. Chapter 559, Jun Chennai was named and wanted to be killed. Xiaoju is a goo insect that can control people's sleep. Not only that, it can also control people's dreams. Therefore, Xia Ying planned to let Xiaoju take action to transform Lanchester's dream. People whose dreams have been transformed by Xiaoju often cannot distinguish between dreams and reality. Therefore, even if Lanchester discovered that the script was different at that time, he would not feel strange, but would naturally think that he had changed it. Yu Lingfeng listened to Xia Ying's words, nodded, and then calculated the time. According to the time difference, it happened to be late at night in Lanchester. At this time, she should be sleeping. Yu Lingfeng went to Lanchester's home by switching spaces, and then easily sneaked into her computer, copied her latest manuscript, and gave it to Xia Ying, who then modified the scene conceived by Ye Xiaoxuan. "Go up there, and when everything is done, change Lanchester's script to what it looks like now." While Xia Ying was dealing with all this, Xiaoju was taken to Lanchester's home by Yu Lingfeng, so that he could transform Lanchester's dream. After everything was completed, Lanchester just woke up and everything seemed to fall into place, just right. After waking up, Lanchester turned on his computer and saw a script that was different from yesterday. He didn't have any doubts. Instead, he nodded with great satisfaction after appreciating the script he wrote. Yu Lingfeng was hiding aside with Xiaoju at this time, observing Lanchester's reaction. Judging from the current situation, their plan should have been successful, but just as Yu Lingfeng was about to leave with Xiaoju, suddenly, Lanchester's phone rang. "Lanchester, I am very satisfied with your latest script, especially the scene of rescuing the hostage girl. It is very suitable for the implementation of my plan." Lanchester was confused when he heard this. "Boss, what are you talking about? I didn't write anything about rescuing the hostage girl." Lanchester's words also confused the other party. "What did you say? You showed me the script yesterday. Didn't you add such a plot specifically for me?" "No, I don't remember when I wrote this section." Lanchester was confused and scratched his hair, looking full of doubts. "Open your email and I'll show you the script you sent me yesterday." The other end is obviously angry. Lanchester opened his mailbox and was stunned when he saw the familiar yet unfamiliar script. Then, her memory began to slowly come back to life. She did write such a passage, but why did she change it? "I like that script very much. Don't change it anymore. I will use the on-site facilities to stage a performance accident and kill that gentleman. Don't forget the orders from above." "Yes, got it." Lanchester nodded silently and hung up the phone. Yu Lingfeng frowned after hearing this conversation. An order from above, and it was called by name, to kill Jun Chennai. Who is going to do this? After Yu Lingfeng told Xia Ying all this, Xia Ying was stunned. How is this going? Is this so-called order from above aimed at Jun Chennai? If this so-called boss only wanted to kill Jun Chennai from the beginning, why was the same plan used on Chinya in the previous life? What is the connection between them? End of this chapter. The Return of the National Goddess. Author, Yuen Suya. Chapter 560. Chapter 560. Why are you an agent? Wait a minute, Xia Ying suddenly realized something. In the accident in the last life, 3 people died, but Chinya was not among them. Chinya just became a vegetative state. In his previous life, Jun Chennai only played a minor role in this movie, playing a very small role. In other words, Chinya was most likely just a person who was accidentally injured, and the only person he targeted from the beginning to the end was Jun Chennai. Who are those people who died in the previous life? Why wasn't Jun Chennai injured? Xia Ying's brain suddenly short-circuited and she couldn't remember who the dead people were. Jun Chennai has always been concerned about the position of the Jun family's heir since he was a child. Everyone thinks that the Jun family is the first family in the imperial capital. It is very prosperous and has a big business. But they don't know that there are a lot of people in the Jun family killing each other. While Xia Ying was thinking hard and couldn't think of a reason, Yu Lingfeng gently touched Xiaoju, sat aside, and slowly said such meaningful words. Xia Ying suddenly raised her eyes to look at Yu Lingfeng and asked hurriedly, Yu Lingfeng, what do you mean by this? Do you know something? Yu Lingfeng looked at Xia Ying, I just know a little bit, but I don't know what the situation is. If you want to know, it would be better to ask Jun Chennai. Good. Xia Ying nodded, thinking deeply about what Yu Lingfeng had just said. Did Yu Lingfeng mean that someone within the Jun family wanted to frame Jun Chennai? Xia Ying was just about to call Jun Chennai and arrange to meet, when she suddenly flipped through her phone's address book and saw a name she hadn't seen for a long time, Rong Ci. Xia Ying felt that instead of asking Jun Chennai, it would be more fruitful to ask Rong Ci. Jun Chennai is the person involved. Even if there is something, he may not tell Xia Ying completely. After all, those things were not honorable to Jun Chennai, and telling her as an outsider would be a bit of a grudge. Rong Ci was confused when he received Xia Ying's call. He didn't expect that Xia Ying would call him and ask him out for dinner or something. Just when Rong Ci felt excited in his heart, thinking that his spring had arrived, he dressed up for a long time and went out. When he came to the agreed place, he saw Yu Lingfeng standing next to Xia Ying. A face with a smile as bright as a sunflower suddenly became clouded. Almost forgot about Yu Lingfeng, well, he still thought too much. Rong Ci suppressed the expression on his face, walked towards Xia Ying and Yu Lingfeng, then sat directly opposite them, and asked, why are you two suddenly looking for me? I've been very busy recently, but I don't have time to fool around with you. What are you busy with? Yu Lingfeng asked with a frown. Rong Ci was drinking tea and was choked by Yu Lingfeng's question. I said, how many times do I have to remind you before you can remember who I am? Oh. Yu Lingfeng responded indifferently. Rong Ci rolled his eyes angrily. Children nowadays really don't know how to respect their elders at all. Call him over in broad daylight and stuff him with dog food. This is it. Rong Ci, your family is so rich, why do you still want to be a spy? Rong Ci was choked again, why did you call me out today? Why did you make it like interrogating a prisoner? It made him feel weird, and the way they looked at him made him feel numb and uncomfortable. End of this chapter.